In the world of huge projects, there's this term that gets thrown around that sounds almost mystical: time at large. You hear people talk about it like it's some unavoidable force of nature. But what if I told you it's actually a pretty predictable and totally preventable project failure? Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain. It really all boils down to this one question: what actually happens when the finish line for your project just evaporates? When that one date holding everything together suddenly isn't enforceable anymore? That's exactly the rabbit hole we're diving into. So, right off the bat, let's just bust the biggest myth out there. Time at large isn't some clever legal trick. It's not a random act of God. No, it's the logical, predictable result of a system breaking down. And you know what the good news is? If you can see it coming, you can absolutely stop it. Okay, to really get this, I want you to think of every contract having its own clock. It starts ticking on day one, and it's supposed to stop right on the completion date. But sometimes that clock just grinds to a halt. So here's the textbook definition. When a project is at large, that original completion date is basically off the table. The contractor is no longer bound by it. But here's the real kicker. The employer usually loses their right to claim damages for the delay. We're talking about a massive financial risk here. Right, so how in the world does a project even get to this point? Well, it's not a single event. It's more like a chain reaction. Let's really dissect the anatomy of how this whole thing collapses. It pretty much boils down to this two-part failure. First, the employer does something or fails to do something that causes a delay. Think late approvals or blocking access to the site. Second, and this part is absolutely critical, the contract's own system for dealing with that delay, the extension of time process, doesn't get used. A new date is never set. And when those two things collide, the whole timeline just falls apart. And this quote, this really gets right to the heart of the legal logic. It's just a simple principle of fairness, right? You can't be the one to cause a delay and then turn around and penalize the other guy for that very same delay. It just makes sense. Let's see how this plays out in the real world. So on day 30, the employer causes a delay. By day 60, the contractor does exactly what they're supposed to do. They formally request more time. But then day 90 rolls around and nothing. Crickets. The engineer just ignores it. Fast forward, more and more delays pile up, but that original date is never changed. So when the project, surprise, surprise, finishes late, the employer's claim for damages gets thrown out. Why? Because they never bothered to refix the clock. Now, it's really easy to look at this and just blame it on sloppy paperwork. But the real problem here isn't the symptom, it's the disease. And that disease is a deep, fundamental failure in planning. This is such a crucial point. Poor contract administration, that's just the symptom. The real disease is a lack of planning maturity. And you know where this often starts? With intense commercial pressure to win bids using totally unrealistic timelines. The problem didn't begin when the paperwork was ignored. It began when the project plan was built on a foundation of pure wishful thinking. And hey, think about all these common project issues, right? Delayed designs, rework, resource shortages. Are any of these really a surprise? Of course not. They are known patterns. They're predictably unpredictable. A mature plan doesn't pretend they won't happen. It actually prepares for them. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now for the most important part, the cure. Let's get right into the prevention playbook. It all comes down to 5 incredibly powerful lessons. If you can master these, you will keep control of your project's clock, and you'll stop it from ever spiraling into the chaos of time at large. All right, lesson number 1. Your project schedule isn't something you create, frame, and then hang on the wall like a piece of art. It has to be a living, breathing document. You've got to update it constantly, adjust it when reality on the ground changes, and formally refix it every single time a delay is confirmed. A static plan is just a liability waiting to happen. Second, you have to be a realist. Model those known surprises. So what does that actually mean? It means building in genuine, realistic allowances for bad weather. It means factoring in the procurement risks for those long lead items. And it means treating your project's float, that buffer time, as a strategic tool, not as some fantasy land where problems disappear. Lesson 3 gets a little technical, but it's a really smart way to operate. When a delay happens, don't just write a report about it, model it. Use something called a fragment. Think of it as a mini schedule of just the delay and plug it directly into your main plan. This will show you the exact impact on the critical path and give you solid, defensible ground to set a new date. And lesson 4 is all about a shift in mindset. All those notices, all those determinations, all those revised programs, that isn't just bureaucracy. That is the critical infrastructure that keeps your contract's time mechanism alive and well. And the cost of getting this wrong isn't just some inefficiency, it's literally losing your power to enforce the contract. And the final lesson is this: stop chasing perfection. No major project runs in a perfect straight line. The goal isn't to somehow avoid all disruption. It's to build a system that can absorb it. Think of it like a suspension bridge. It's designed to flex, not to be rigid. Strong planning is all about controlled recovery, not some flawless, imaginary journey. So, when we zoom all the way out, what is this really about? Well, it's that classic conflict, isn't it? The plan on paper versus the messy reality on the ground. And here it is. Here's the big takeaway. Time at large is what happens when a project team allows the contract to just float away from what's real. It's a collective failure to acknowledge what's actually happening and adapt the plan accordingly. We're going to end on this really powerful thought. At the end of the day, you don't get the project timeline you hoped for, you get the one you actively manage and defend. The choice between a controlled timeline and one that's at large is made way, way before any lawyers get involved. So the real question for you is your plan a reflection of reality, or is it just a reflection of your imagination?